Hello and welcome. I'm Hullhound and today is the start of a new tutorial series where we take you from nothing to a feature-complete 3D game. Specifically, we'll be building all the systems needed for you to use as a base for your own 3D cozy or adventure game. This will include the base requirement so that we can actually have a game well to move around in, visual elements so that we can make it look visually distinctive, core gameplay elements such as dialogue and interaction systems, and then ancillary systems that are just required as part of a standard gameplay experience that we expect nowadays. And then including audio and any specifically requested features from the comments. I'll be taking a effectiveness first approach rather than a purity approach. So where possible, we will take advantage of free resources and plugins rather than creating our own from scratch. This will help us get to a working game much faster than if we try to do everything ourselves. Today's video we're focusing on setting up the level and character movement. So at the end of this video we'd expect to have the base requirements down and ready to use. Our first step is to create a new project, so open up Godot, enter in your project name and path, and press create and edit. Once we've given that a moment to load up, we'll be presented with a blank project. So first things first is to start getting our character controller set up. So if we search for third-party character controller, we should have this come up. So following this, we can get that installed and added into our project. Once we have that, we can see what is included in the pack, and it's a series of different nodes and scripts. As far as we're concerned, if we go straight to the playground, then what we'll see when we try and run that is that we are able to look around and see a basic demo scene, but we're unable to move. And we're unable to move because our key mappings have not been set up. If we have a look at the controller itself, we can have a look at each of the elements that are there, and we can see that the key mappings are not included on the inspector level, but are included inside the code. So in this case, if we just look around, we can see a little bit of information about the inputs that are required. By going to project settings and input map, we can start adding in the input names that we need in order to actually use the key stuff. Inputs, that's the word. So by looking through, here seems to be the list that we need. We set this in, so we add in the name of the input maps, that's what's actually the value that goes in code. And then once we've done that for each of the relevant sections, we can add in the assigned keys against that input map. So you can see I've added in just what we can see in code, and now by pressing the plus, and then a physical keyboard key, and then OK, we can assign that keyboard key against that action. Once I've done this to all of the options, we can open up the game, and now we can see that we are able to move around and each of the keys are working, which is excellent news. So now we have a working character controller. It's time to take a look at actually building up a level of our own. So within Godot, if we create a new scene, just call it level, a 3D scene, because we're making a 3D game, we can go to our 3D view and get started. So what we want to do next is load in the character controller so that we can see it within our level. It's probably just easiest to copy that from the playground scene and then just load it into our scene by Control C and Control V. If we just reset the transform to set it back to 0, 0, then we have our basic character. If we add in a floor, so using a mesh instance 3D, we can set that to have a quad, and we can rotate that so that it acts as a floor. So nice and straightforward. A bit larger. And there we have a very basic floor. However, if we run the game and try and interact, we will fall through the floor. This is because there isn't any collision on the floor. But first, let's quickly add a light because it was looking a little bit dark. So there's no reason for me to lift it up, but I just find that the sun feels like it should be up, and so I lift it up. But yeah, we get the same problem even with a light, that we are falling through the floor. How we can solve that is we can add in a collision mesh. So by clicking the mesh and then selecting the mesh option, we're presented with a few different options that we're able to use in order to add a mesh to this object. We probably want the tri-mesh static body because this object isn't going to move and we want high level of precision. And just by doing that, we can see we're now able to move along the floor that we've created. As a little challenge, why don't you try and create a box that the character can jump on, following exactly the same process that we just did, but using a box or a cube shape instead of a quad. So give that a go, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Come back. So, following through the same process, let's create a new mesh instance 3D, add a box shape, and set it to a reasonable size shape. I always get the Z and Y the wrong way around because I'm used to Blender, but there we are. So once we've done that, we need to do the same, so mesh and then tri-mesh static body. And if we give that a go, we should be able to jump on to the box, and there we are. So now that we've done that, I've noticed that we are getting a few error messages that are coming through, and it seems to be because there is a series of input events that we didn't add when we were setting up the character controller. These are simple enough to add. So if we just do that and then assign some keys to those events, then we should find that those error messages go away. Okay, and that seems to resolve the issue. And we're getting no more error messages coming through, so that is good. At this point, we could build up a level just using the tools that we have available by adding in those different shapes and build up a full feature complete level. We could do that, but it would be quite effort intensive. So instead, what we can do is load in a set of pre-created objects and use those to build up our level. So typically you can do this by buying asset packs and then build up that level from those component parts. As it stands at the moment, asset packs for Godot are often FBX or OBJ files that have been exported from a tool such as Blender, rather than being a dedicated set of assets in quite the same way that Unity and Unreal asset packs are. I expect this to change over time, but this is how we are currently. So, in order to move to our next step, let's add in a series of objects. So I've created a objects folder and dragged in two objects from my asset pack. So tile dirt and tile grass. Nice and straightforward, and these are from the Cinti Simple Adventure, Simple Fantasy pack. But you can use any asset pack that you choose, and I have included a link in the description to this asset pack and a free asset pack that I can also recommend should you want to use any of those. So now that we have the objects into our tool, we can just drag them into the scene, and you can see that that just moves and is movable as you'd expect it to be. However, we have the same issue that we have with our standard quad, that we have no collision. So we have to do exactly the same process here. And then it works. And you might think there's no particular advantage of this over what we're already doing. But obviously this is quite a simple shape compared to some of the more complex shapes that will be in asset packs. Additionally, what we can do is create a material. So when we get OBJ files coming in from an asset pack, they won't be correctly linked to a material. So by creating a material and setting up the relevant texture, we can then have the objects be the right color, etc., which can be quite useful. So in this case, we'll create a new material and we'll set up the image against it by setting the albedo texture. I've forgotten to set up load in the texture, so I'll just do that. And now we can load in that using the quick load. Once we've done that, we can just drag in the texture over our objects and then select material override. And we'll now see that we have a coloured in floor tile in this case. We do the same for our grass tile. Then we can see that we now have more composable pieces that we can leverage. We set snapping on, that it can become a bit easier to move around if you just quickly restart those, so we don't have things being in the wrong position. What we can do to make this easier, so that we don't need to go through this same process every time that we add in a new object, is we can create these objects into their own scenes. And then we can just drag those scenes on with the collisions and the materials on already in place. So we can do that by selecting the object and then saving branch as scene, which you can see me do here. Do that for both of them. You can then save these to your hard disk. And then you're able to just drag that directly on and have it already be the appropriate material. And my trackpad just marked that up. But yes, at this point we have all the components that we need to flesh out a basic game and move around on a map. What I will do is I will, off screen, create a level myself, building up using the Cinti asset pack that I've got. And I can show you that in a moment. But at this point, we're in a pretty good position. And in the next video, we'll be looking at visual elements. Here is a little scene that I created to hopefully give you a little bit of inspiration. So just while the video is ending, I'll just put this on and we can see the character moving around in the little map that I've created, which will hopefully give you a bit more inspiration and an opportunity to decide on something yourself to do. So with that, that's the end of this video. So remember to subscribe to be notified of the upcoming videos, where we'll take it from this basic level and flesh it out into a fully featured game. If you have any questions about what we've covered, feel free to drop a question in the comments and I'll get back to you. Have a great one and see you soon.